Hello and welcome to the second video in a series of 6 videos for Module 5 focusing on design thinking. In this particular video we examine investigating and defining. And in doing so we draw upon our design thinking approaches and understandings. We examine the sequence of content F to 10. We discuss defining and decomposing real world problems, and I'll conclude the video with a final word. Again, a highly recommended resource for this topic is also in the Digital Technologies Hub, where you'll find video 4 in sequencing the curriculum with Associate Professor James Curran. And also go to 5.1 resources to explore, and you'll find the AITSL document, Learning Through Doing, Introduction to Design Thinking Resources. And there's a lot of great resources on design thinking listed on page 14 of that document. In terms of investigating and defining, we need to know that the processes of defining, designing, implementing and evaluating combine to form a 4-stage process to create digital solutions. And defining itself is defined in the ACARA glossary as involving students analysing problems by describing problems in simpler terms or breaking them down into smaller parts. And you'll note that you've already considered this as an important strategy in computational thinking. In drawing upon design thinking approaches in that resources section, one example there's numerous examples provided, is from the Institute of Design at Stanford and the 5 basic steps. And you'll often find in whichever form of design thinking approach that's presented or that you might adopt, somewhere within there will be, as with the Institute of Design at Stanford, the 5 basic steps, you'll notice that defining is an important part of a design process. The challenge-based learning framework developed by Apple is another way of examining the big ideas, the essential questions, and then coming to understand what is the challenge, what's that critical problem that needs to be solved. In terms of the sequence of content F to 10, we've got participants in this course who are from prep through to year 10. So if you have a look at the expectations around investigating and defining, you'll notice that there's an increasing sophistication related to the specification of a problem from F to 10. And in particular, note in F to 2, there's no expectation for students to be able to define a problem. And this is building through this particular process and production skills, building through those understandings we've developed about those forms of thinking. So the sequence of content F to 10, here's a couple of examples pulled out so we can discuss these more clearly. In F2, investigating and defining, students are expected to follow, describe and represent a sequence of steps and decisions or algorithms needed to solve some simple problems. While at the other end of the continuum, years 9 to 10 are expected to define and decompose real-world problems precisely, taking into account functional and non-functional requirements and including stakeholders to identify needs. Note that students understand that they might not have all of the information they need at this particular level, and they involve interviewing stakeholders for more information. In defining and decomposing real-world problems, decomposing refers to separating a complex problem into parts to allow the problem to be more easily understood, and it may be able to be represented in diagrams. This differs from deconstructing, which is the process of dismantling or pulling a product or system apart to systematically identify and analyse components and their relationships. So here's an example taken from a participant from the cohort that preceded this particular cohort, where the example was to ensure that they maintain a life-work balance. This was their design brief, to maintain a life-work balance and at the same time engage with this course effectively and do the requirements of the certificate of completion. So you can see here where this particular teacher has started with the work-life balance and then discussed and identified their constraints and their requirements. In the requirements, they need to do all 8 quizzes to get the certificate of completion. And while they're engaging in the course, there's some other constraints that they have to work within to maintain a life-work balance. In defining and decomposing real-world problems, here's an example of a Year 7-8 content description, the content description, and note that literacy, the ICT capability, critical and creative thinking are also able to be developed, those general capabilities able to be developed as students work through this process. So here's an example, an interest in a newsletter is declining, the readers want a publication that's engaging and interactive, there's time and budgetary constraints. Kim, who produced the newsletter, uses word processing software to create the newsletter, identify and classify the constraints on the solution to this problem. And here's a possible example, and you can see how this relates to the life-work balance and the task of getting the certificate of completion. That's an expectation around Year 7-8. So to conclude with a final word, just remember the required activities. We appreciate you engaging again in this video and using the handout, engaging with the module activities that go with this particular video, and working through the quiz in the way that suits you best. And we've got the engagement and extension activities and the optional activities for you. Thank you so much again, and I look forward to continue to work with you throughout the rest of Module 5. Thank you so much.